My name is Anthony Garcia, and today I will be answering the two-part question: how does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? My film, Insane in the Snake Brain, incorporates two main genres, being drama and psychological thriller. To begin this presentation, I will answer the first part of the question on how does your product use or challenge conventions. I will first talk about the conventions used within my film, Insane in the Snake Brain. Our antagonist, Guillermo, has multiple scenes in which he inflicts fear throughout our victim, Anthony. Their dialogue of them going back and forth shows the first genre we incorporated into our film, which was drama. The film that had inspired a dramatic genre for my film was The Hunger Games. When it comes to the conventions of a drama, audiences have a set standard for what to expect. An audience normally expects the plot to follow the standard of an exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. The audience also expects the characters, being people or entities, to be the ones who drive the story with their emotions, actions, and relationships. There is also an expectation for a conflict, being both internal and external, and creates tension that further drives the story. We incorporated Steve Neal's theory of representation into our film through our credits that show a snake wrapping around an apple, seemingly referencing the biblical story of Adam and Eve and how a snake had deceived Eve. Stuart Hall's theory of representation states that representation can shape the way audiences interpret the meaning behind a film. Stuart Hall would note that this representation set in motion of an audience expectation of deception and people making their way around common knowledge. Within my film, I had used all of these conventions to portray a dramatic film within the conversation between Guillermo and Anthony. We started with the rising action, with Anthony talking about the price of healthcare and talking about how his and his family's healthcare should not have to be bought, as he has a grim facial expression at the time, too. In a later scene, Guillermo threatens Anthony's family as he says, "with or without your family," after Anthony had said he would rather die. Moving on, the second genre for my film, Insane the Snake Brain, psychological thriller. My inspiration for this genre for the making of my film was The Joker, directed by Todd Phillips, which is a psychological thriller. When it comes to a psychological thriller, there is a set audience expectations in which the audience waits for. One of the main audience expectations is an intense feeling of suspense being created within the film. This suspense leads the characters within the film to reconsider their choices, along with beginning to focus on the character's mental state. The final expectation for the audience for a psychological thriller is the characters beginning to question reality and question themselves, leading to a plot twist within the film. My film incorporates this genre with the seemingly unsuspecting character Anthony and how he begins to question reality after the antagonist Guillermo gives him a genuine reality check and puts Anthony's family on the line after arguing back and forth about healthcare. Moving on to the second part of the question, being how does my film represents social groups or issues. My film shows the problems within the healthcare system and how it is more of a predator than it is a method of helping others. My film represents this through the way Guillermo talks throughout the entirety of the film, seemingly representing a predator getting ready to pounce on his prey. This use of representation shows how these huge healthcare industries prey upon the less fortunate and the ones who are in a struggling situation at the moment. Guillermo persuades Anthony to finally give in to the temptation of joining him, sealing his fate through the bite mark in the final scene, dooming him to eternal suffrage and debts owed to these huge healthcare industries. We incorporated Judith Butler's theory of social normalities presented by the general public into our film by only having the cast being made up of strictly male characters, implying male performativity into our film. The background of the film implies a lower income household, as there are clearly pots and pans in the background that have yet to be washed, along with the uncanny yellow light illuminating the surroundings around both the characters. Judith Butler would note that the common stereotype of a common hard-working family father who is the main provider for the household is being portrayed through the use of only male characters. This is further portrayed throughout the film, especially when Anthony first mentions his family and how they should not have to be paying that much for their health and safety, and is later brought up again when Guillermo mentions them again in a more hostile manner. And with that, this wraps up my presentation. Thank you for your time.